integrated design from the experience of a business designer or related to a business design project. But I want to start with this architecture project, the Yokohama boat terminal, designed by FOA, and a brilliant piece of architecture, in my opinion, which integrates so many concepts and ideas, so many philosophies, shapes, new materials, new approaches towards planning, new interpretations of what is a surface, what is a wall, what is movement within a building. It was an extremely beautiful structure that meshed up a lot of ideas during the competition phase. But when it got to the construction phase, it became an integrated headache, because there was no technology to actually manifest or realize the designs that were made with form-oriented softwares, not manufacturing softwares. So all these amazing curves and detailing and kind of intersections and aesthetics achievements became extremely labor-intensive and manual to realize. And what happened as a result is that FOA, as a design firm, defaulted into a very kind of banal, to my opinion, approach towards design. So this entire kind of richness of forms and ideas and philosophies that were integrated into this product ended up with the next product being a nice mosaic. And I think this is one of the problems with integrated designs. And I want to tell you from my experience as a designer by education who turned into an entrepreneur and who's actually doing business design projects at the moment and helping companies manage innovation projects, that this kind of intersection is really, really not that simple or not that intuitive. So I started as an entrepreneur. I co-founded 2 software companies, and then I realized that the richness of doing new ideas in a business environment is extremely like designing new opportunities. And then I turned into innovation management. I'm also part of the group, Google Experts Group. That means that I'm helping Google establish a lot of acceleration programs around the world and support other entrepreneurs while they're doing this unintuitive or complicated mashup between entrepreneurship, strategy, and designs. And the thing why it's interesting and why it's important is because without this mixture, you really get like partial parts of it. So strategy and entrepreneurship is very limited and uninspiring if it's not involved with any design. Okay, but strategy and design, if it doesn't come with entrepreneurship, it just remains theory. Okay, and if design and entrepreneurship mesh together, but they're not strategically aligned, they're not strategically driven, they become mannerism. So this kind of combination, this integration between these elements is not easy. So by practice, I kind of realized that I am a disruptor. And that means that what I do and what disruptors actually do is they form sorts of initiatives that are intended to change the rules of the game. Disruption changes the rules of the game. It changes the reality and forces us to respond to that. So entrepreneurship on its own is just another way of kind of making money and gaining a profit. But if we're actually trying to change the game, we need to think about it in a different sense. And businesses are extremely disrupted now, and especially with all this notion of design, because design thinking is bombarded into businesses from left to right, and they feel like compelled or maybe even unintentionally obliged to deal with this design thinking. And they don't really understand what it means. So some theories are presented to them and says like, okay, so you need to combine all the disciplines together now in order to make a successful business and actually, you know, do good as an enterprise. But when they go and look for stuff, this is what you get for business design. So you get like business cards and all sorts like funky and interesting, yeah, beautiful diagrams that have no information in them. They are useless as tools. So it just adds up to the confusion. And it kind of leaves design and this whole notion of creativity as this miraculous thing that people are just like, you know, hoping that will fall on them one time. But when you actually look into innovations, you actually see that they're super complicated because they're happening in so many areas. And they're integrated, you know, they require the integration of so many fields. So it's not an easy task at all. And because of these complexities, as a friend of mine and a colleague called Milan Gunter, and we get the results of like, your call is important to us. And usually you get that when you're waiting on the line, okay, for an hour. And what he called it, he said, this is corporate awkwardness. Okay, so you get these awkward things as a result of design not getting integrated fully. Okay, with the user experience, with the products, with the processes, with the methods, with the tools. And I think this maybe somehow kind of represents why is that, because the business managers, they're all about money. So this is basically what they want. And you have the designers, and they're kind of a kindergarten, you know, playing with sticky notes and developing all these concepts and making ideas. And of course, you have the design manager, okay, who's in charge of kind of like, is the responsible adult, okay, the responsible grown-up. He needs to combine the money and the ideas and stuff like that, but there are very few of them existing. And as Wolfgang said in his talk, they actually require a lot of education and a lot of skills and a lot of experience. And also, maybe even a kind of an understanding what is design. I mean, we're talking about integrated designs. A lot of people are not really sure what is design at all. So I came up with this simple explanation for myself, which is basically design is an intervention in a system that generates additional value. Okay, so if there's an intervention and there's a system and it generates additional value, it's a design. Okay? And if we want to design, we need to follow up on these elements. But the reality is that most people don't see design like that. They see design as nice and useless things. Okay? And this is also with the example of wrapping up, you know, an engineering achievement. Okay? Design is kind of, yeah, let's make it nicer. Let's make it, but let's celebrate it, exactly. And maybe it was all right, I mean, before, but if we look at the reality now, we're totally changing. We're totally shifting from economies of fast-moving consumer goods, which is basically about yogurts and drinks and all these industrial products that were needed to be wrapped nicely so we could buy them. We're moving into fast-moving applications and services. So it's not just about the interface itself, it's about the methods and the tools and intermediary products that are helping us get to the actual goal. The goal is not the yogurt, the goal is not the app, the goal is what we're doing with them. And if we look at the Industrial Revolution, when we had tools, and they basically were really crappy and really kind of not exciting, and we needed to introduce some aesthetics into them. At some point, this aesthetic became kind of a fixation with entertainment. Okay, and entertainment is interesting, but it's not productive. Okay, so we're moving from entertainment to productivity, and from nice to have to must happen, because we are surrounded by all these nice things that we want and that we desire. And of course, when everybody wants to be a designer, they also want, you know, to create all these nice things, and basically it introduces a lot of noise. So must happen is an imperative. And at the end of it, design is basically a practice first, okay? Before it's an accomplishment. So when we look at design, we can always think of design as the accomplishment, as the achievement that we're doing, or as the practice that creates this accomplishment. And the process of design is actually how we generate what we want to create. And here, in terms of business design projects, we see a clear understanding that we need to move away from design manifestations. When you're looking at startups, the most important things that they're telling people who want to start a startup is, okay, so you have this beautiful idea, nobody wants it, okay? So unless it's validated, unless it's feasible, unless it's sellable, nobody wants it. So it's just like you're manifesting your desires, fantastic, do it on your own expenses. But we're actually going to accomplishment modeling. So we need to understand exactly how to accomplish a mission, okay? And the design becomes this engagement with, let's see what needs to happen so something else might happen, okay? And this kind of opens up the new opportunities from looking into design as new clients. So we have, okay, so there's a proliferation of design tools. It's much easier to make a poster. It's much easier to make a rendering. It's much easier to make, even to build some technology. So let's sell it to more people, but basically do the same thing. But let's look at new forms that can be created, okay, within the particular domains. And this actually requires a certain shift in perspective from becoming kind of radical revolutionists. Okay, so we want to change the world into, let's do some disruptive increments. Okay, so very, very small changes that actually eventually change the rules of the game. And as a conclusion, and to sort of lessons from business design projects, a good integrated design is a design that doesn't default. Okay, it's not that engaging in this design doesn't send us yelling back into our existing habits and kind of traditional perceptions. Okay, so if we're able to do this amazing new forms and new architectures, approaching them in an integrated design perspective would mean that they'll be so successful that we wouldn't go back towards doing tiling afterwards. Thank you. Yeah, so we have two live examples now.
My presentation is actually a fraction of an emoji research I've done regarding the semiotics of emoji, the simulacrum aspect, and the spectacular nature and its ethics. And this part is the ethic part and morality, and it's a bit different than what I've heard so far. Actually, it all started with an experiment I tried with my ex-husband. We got divorced 3 years ago, and our amicable divorce soon turned sour until it reached a point where we simply couldn't bear to look at each other, and our conversation actually looked like this. That's him.
Is this for real?
It's a translation of something much worse. Yeah. The Hebrew version is horrible. So, yeah, well, I chose the nice part that I say so. But for about 6 months, we only used text messages to communicate between us, preferably monosyllabic on my part, because I was unable to communicate in any other way. And, but after a while, after 6 months, I invited him to chat with me via WhatsApp, provided that each statement will be accompanied by an emoji. And he agreed, and he also consented to this whole thing. now. And he agreed, and we started the chat with our usual smears and accusations, but for some reason we realized that it was a bit harder to bully each other and to be aggressive and, you know, what you've seen before, with these yellowish emoji faces hovering our every move. So we were still quite successful, though, in finding more aggressive emojis. And I have to remind you that it was about 2 years ago when there wasn't a variety of bullying emojis and aggressive emojis as there are today. But we sort of managed to find out all sorts of things. The Beatle is because I don't clean the house as much as I'm supposed to, and all that. And then after a few days, I invited him for another chat. But this time, it was with photos that we took of each one took photos of himself or herself, and we started chatting with these photos. And the first hi actually shocked me, because I haven't looked at him in 6 months, and his face actually spoke to me. And it disarmed me and startled me. And we spoke for about an hour and couldn't come up with the usual and familiar anger and resentment. And we simply stayed even after the conversation was over and looked at each other's photos and stayed online. And it was very touching and moving, I think, but you know, we're still not friends. And why am I airing my domestic disputes here? Because in our mediated and texted world, where the gap between the virtual and the actual fades away, such images, although somewhat exaggerated, are not completely surreal. We do everything through screens. So I decided to look at this technical gap in a non-judgmental manner. Rather than a barrier, I view this gap as a grid. Such a grid. A grid that illustrates our changed perspective. It does not necessarily entail a mode of not looking. It is simply looking and perceiving in a different way. So if we are to accept the fact that our perception is mainly mediated through screens, we also need to accept the fact that emojis play an important role in that perception. The emoji, what they do is replace prosody, and by prosody I mean the intonation, the accentuation, the punctuation of the text. They create a new mode of written spoken language. They disrupt the text, and when they disrupt the text, they encourage us to pause, to explore its emblematic nature. They shorten the text and they decode it. They are fun and they are playful, and we all use that. And above all, they replace our faces and transcribe our body language. The Western philosopher or thinker who is most associated with the face is Emmanuel Levinas. This French-Russian philosopher of the phenomenological school attempts to describe one's cognition and understanding of experiences without former theories or biases. He calls his philosophy the first philosophy. Levinas constructs his philosophy of being, of the unknown or unknowable other, any other, who addresses me with her face. It appears that Levinas's main argument with Western thought is that the latter, Western thought, considers the other as only temporarily unattained and unknown to the self. According to that thought, upon meeting an other, we immediately attempt to append her via our cognition of ourselves as us. We try to relate to the other with our own terminology and categorization. And Levinas considers such an act of categorizing and owning an act of violence. And which erases the other's otherness and reduces or categorizes it onto our ontological perception of same. I think that Western philosophy can remain intact as long as face-to-face encounters still exist and occur. But because in such encounters, the other's mere presence resists my reductive categorization or owning. But once social encounters are not necessarily, not a necessity, as in the case in many times nowadays, this otherness is reduced to sameness, a sameness that has severe ethical ramification. This is, I think, where Levinas's philosophy and the role that emoji play in our communication are intertwined and worth noting. According to Levinas, the face of the other meeting my face is the first utterance that is never uttered before the first word is spoken. And this utterance is, "Thou shalt not kill." Such a strange utterance and unconventional. But it is explained by Levinas in the following manner. Ethics is created via encounters. And once there are no encounters, no ethics is needed. One can consume and objectify whatever one desires and appropriate them as one's own, as nourishment, as same with the self. And such consuming cannot be established in face-to-face encounters. Consumption and reduction are transformed into passive sensitivity, which is experienced once the face of the other meets my own, beseeching and commanding, "Thou shalt not kill." The other's face stresses the difference between us, the fact that he or she are not to be the same as me and cannot be an object of the self. But when encounters do not occur, when the emoji of an apple is just as cute as the one of a smiling face, the shift between subjective egoism on the one hand and sensory sensitive experience on the other evaporates at times. Let's think about it. In my room, with my very natural hand extension, I buy commodities, I learn about what is going on in the world, I express my opinion on whatnot, I pay my bills with it. Would it be too far-fetched to assume that the interpersonal communication via my phone can be considered as an extension of my own self, that the other on the other side of the line, on the other end of the line, is an objectified commodity? And if so, does the presence of the emoji at the end of the statement replaces my face and beseeches, "Thou shalt not kill," or at least "Thou shalt not consume me," at least? Or is this the object of emoji objectifies our discourse and by proxy objectifies us? Levinas provides an answer to this question when he characterizes discourse in general. He differentiates between two modes of discourse. The one is rhetoric, eloquence in the said, which he considers as which he considers as ideological manifests which violently obliterate the other. And the other is everyday language or the saying which respect the presence of the other in the discourse. In mediated discourse, I think this is the simplest way to illustrate it. Because when we are chatting online, the online typing thing that we see at the top of the phone is actually the manifestation that there's someone else on the other side there, and there's someone else who's thinking, hesitating, and in the process of responding. So actually, everyday language is what we see in text messages, and in this sense, it is disruptive and interruptive, and also disrupted and interrupted. And thus, it manifests the other presence as an addressee. When everyday spoken language includes emoji, it diminishes violence and bullying, and we don't see any violence and bullying with emojis. We actually see that when we have the manifestation of ideological manifests, and not when you accompany everything with an emoji. But due to time constraints, I skip over Levinas's philosophy. I return to it a bit more at the end. But I'm going to share with you the experiment that I've done. I've actually asked subjects, not to say objects, to conduct the same experiment I've attempted with my ex-husband. The participants were asked to create a pool of photos, I call them memojis, and to chat with a participant partner, first using emojis and later on using the memojis. And the third part was a questionnaire that they were supposed to send to me once they were done. So most of the memoji keyboards I've received were actually of human faces, like this one. In a way of simulacra, they are attempting to replicate the emoji, which is a bit strange. And I was actually surprised to find keyboards like this, with faces in things. I'm sorry, these are drawing or faces in things, or Lego keyboards. And such choices, I think, can be explained by Levinas in that the face of the other does not entail eye color or the shade of one's skin, but rather a glimpse of humanity that is conveyed, the otherness that is revealed. And in this respect, I think that the elaborated emoji keyboards that were launched a while ago, though they are very politically correct, you even have, I don't know, something green for minions. They are very politically correct, but they can be viewed, if you follow Levinas's logic, as an attempt to categorize oneself ad nauseum, to objectify myself by cartooning selfing indefinitely. And the memoji refuses to be categorized or reduced to color or shade or even to be anthropomorphized. And the answers I got to the questionnaire reveal the following findings. There was a significant tendency to use the emoji several times in one text message, and memoji was usually used once per message. And I think this finding shows that there is no need for hyperbolism or exaggeration when it comes to memoji. There was less textual utterances in the memoji chat. Again, the face spoke in and of itself. The memoji was first sent at the beginning of the utterance, while the emoji was sent at the end. In this sense, this finding follows Levinas's analysis of the primal encounter of faces, which is replayed in every single utterance and in every single message, and doesn't matter how much you text. It was harder to understand the face in the memoji texting. And I think this difficulty may very well stem from the novelty of the idea of memoji, but an interpretation that resonates with Levinas's themes would suggest that the emoji face simultaneously invites and denies accessibility and cognition. More than half of my respondents said that they would not continue to use the memoji keyboard. And although this finding is somewhat disappointing, I think it might have to do with the fact that this technology was not accessible when I was running the experiment. It is accessible, and there is actually an application that is called memoji. And you can take photos of your face and do whatever we have done 2 years ago. The other is not myself. It is unattainable, infinite, and remote. The emoji, and to a greater extent the memoji, are the tools that we have at our hands at the moment to respect and comply with the responsibility that accompanies Levinas's first philosophy. At an age where the grid is the self, viewing the other from a changed perspective can be both beneficial and interesting. Who knows, such responsibility may even bring us our faces back. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tom Mittelman. I'm going to talk about my project. Just before, it's hard to go after Michal, and her English is perfect, and I have only practiced with Sammy the fireman the past 2 years, so excuse me for that. Also, I have to relate to my project really relates to what Michal's project that I only notice it now. She's talking about the emoji and our whole civilization and the next generation. This is what they know, and the effects of it are so great that my project is really needed, and I'll explain. My project is called Open Mind 360. It's about helping teens deal with emotional distress using new virtual reality and interaction technology to experience real-life situations. And after a lot of research that includes the effects of the emoji, this is really a project that is needed. So I started my research, like every designer does, like you all talked about here, with a little research. I really wanted to do something social, have a social impact on something that is close to my heart, and mental health is something that is in my family, and I really wanted to do something about that. It is a really strange combination between design and mental health, and a lot of looks were, how does it exactly work together? But quickly I realized that what I wanted to do was with mental health and stigma, which is a real big problem in mental health, which kind of puts it aside from other health issues that we have. I started asking myself all these questions. Exactly what is mental health and so different from other diseases? Why is it so hard to really to accept it and to know to treat it? And the main question that I asked myself was, how can I, as a design student, can do something that is really meaningful about it? I didn't really know where to go automatically, like you say, don't go automatically. I thought, yeah, exhibition, because that's what I'm used to, that's my world. But I kind of decided to go out of my comfort zone, out of the museums, out of the art schools, and do something that is really different. I'm going to skip all the research that I have, and I'm just going to say a bit of my conclusion so you'll understand why my project is what I chose. My target audience, after a lot of finding out what I really want to do with the stigma, are teenagers that at this age, their most vulnerable stage. Mental disorders, if you don't know, start between the ages about 15 and 25. It's getting earlier and earlier. And I really wanted to do something that can really change their future. Even the way they perceive mental health, that means if they come around it in 10 years, they would look at it differently and look at the people who experience it differently. And also if they, in the army or afterwards, they happen to have a life-changing experience, they would treat themselves differently and they would not push it to the side and do nothing about it. It takes about an average 10 years for someone to start feeling bad feelings until they take care of themselves and get real help. So if I can make it a little earlier, that would be great. And also to show them there is a future. It's something that you can live with. It's not a dead end in any choice, and that's kind of what people think about it now, especially if you talk to teenagers. They don't see, they look at the crazy people. It's not even something that they talk about, but there are so many people who, 1 out of 5 children experience mental distress in their lives. So it's a big number. So this is where I come up with Open Mind 360. What is it exactly? What is my project? Open Mind 360 will develop an educational technology platform enabling young people to understand and cope with emotional distress using virtual reality technologies, 360 photography, and an interactive plot. My main idea was to go into the classroom with a lot of headsets, virtual reality, put it on these kids, make them see something that would make a big experience, like a big influence on them, and then talk about it, have a workshop, go at it again, see something from a different perspective. If you saw someone from one point of view, maybe now you can see it from another point of view. Put it down again, talk, have a real workshop using this technology that you all know. 2 years ago it was even less known, but it's still happening very fast and developing fast, and it's possible. And so my workshops would be about depression, body image, anxiety, and all kinds of different distresses that you find in kids today, shaming and all that. The 360 films, I just want to say it's not like a gimmick. Okay, now VR is hot, let's do something that is trendy. It's much, much more than that. I found that this tool really can make what I want to make happen. What I mean by that? First of all, if you know, the VR can allow you to look at all different angles. And when I want to tell someone or show them how to feel or make them feel different, I have to make them look from another point of view. And this is a really great tool, and it is, researchers say that it's the amazing tool to use as also to make people understand how other people feel. For example, it was used for offensive husbands. To be in a wife's body, in a woman's body, and see how she was. It really worked amazingly. So to use this to make them feel something that the other one feels is a great, and also the empathy, which is kind of gone. There are a lot of research about that as well. Kids lack empathy this generation, and it's something that we have to give them back. And the last thing is the interactive point. Movies you just watch, you're very passive. You let someone else tell you what to do. I wanted to make something that is more active, to make them choose, to make them think, to make them decide where they want to go. I wanted to make an interactive experience to choose their story. So my story splits up in a few places where they can choose where they want to go, and then talk about these choosings. And of course, a bigger idea is to collect data and have a database that tells them their choices that they made, maybe ask them questions and see if their minds have been changing in a while. And all of this has come true to me after I finished my studying here, I opened up a company with two very important partners that are leading it also, Yiftach Weiser and Eros Mulai. So, and the three of us got funding from educational department, and we're just finishing our first movie now. We're having our first workshop also being at the stages at the end, and in September we really hope to go into the schools. So a few of the challenges that we had to deal with is, first of all, creating a platform to see how we can make something that is not only in one place or in one time, and think of a way to make it as far as possible as we can go. We are also thinking later on worldwide, because this is a very wide problem in all countries. How to design an experience. What does it mean to design an experience? You're not designing an object, you're designing a feeling. You want someone, you really want to create a certain way of someone to be touched. And this is this is very wide. We have to design how the classroom is going to look, or how are the people going to sit down, how many kids are going to be in it. All this kind of design is not only the movie, how are we going to design the movie, it's also how to design how the workshop will go. What rhythm would it have? Kids today have a regular rhythm that we are not used to. We are slow, where we talk slow, where we let things happen. It's not like that anymore. We have to understand, and that's the other thing, we have to understand who we are talking to. Who are these teenagers who are very cynical, who do not want to talk about such heavy subjects, who want to have fun, who want to laugh? How can we make it also in our workshop? How can we also make an environment that would be able them to talk, to open up, and then by this maybe we can change something in the way they think now as teenagers, later as an adults, about the whole thing of mental health and getting the help that they need when they need it. And the biggest thing, I think, is the integration between quality education and the content and leading interactive technology. That means that in education right now, the classes have not changed in decades. The maximum is it's nothing that is really big. There's a teacher, she teaches or he teaches, and we want to make something that can really change the way that we learn stuff. So I know that the VR has a very great potential, and a lot of people took it to, let's look at the world, let's visit Peru, let's look at the body, but these are all scientific aspects of the tool. I really want to bring content that is not scientific, that says, okay, let's talk about the feelings through this tool. Let's talk about how we can change reactions through this tool, which is something that a lot of people are afraid of, especially education department is very afraid of doing that and combining technology with it. But I think that has a great potential to be something, and I want to show you just the movie that we made. I'm not going to show you the whole movie, just points. I hope it's going to run nicely. We already made the movie. Just tomorrow it's going to be with all the graphics and all the sound.
אז הייתי אתמול בשיעור נהיגה.
This is not it. Uh-oh. Wait. Let's see if this is it. Yeah. This is an offline version, but I'm really proud of it because I think this movie has...
לא, אתם לא באמת בטבע. זה בית ספר.
רגע. List of browsers that support 360. Maybe here, I'll try it. Sorry. Let's see if this works. It's just a glimpse of what we're doing. It was very, there are not a lot of movies in 360.
לא, אתם לא באמת בטבע. זה בית ספר. לכל בית ספר.
Sorry, should have let it. I think this computer is having a rough time. Yeah, and it should be upgraded, but anyway, it's a really, if you wanna, I'll leave it on the computer so you can see. It's a 12-minute movie or 10-minute movie about a girl who has a shaming issue with a kid in a pool party with her friend.
Okay.
She does something stupid and then her life changes.
Shut up!
One friend that really helps her. What she decides to do.
יאללה, אני שמה
In this movie, we decided.
ערב בנות שלנו. בואו, אל תעמדו בצד, אני אקרא לכם.
סליחה, רגע.
אני בדיוק מסיימת פה איזה...
We decided in this movie that the camera is not going to be someone specific. It's going to be like a ghost. It's going to show you inside. But just because of technical issues, like if you're a person who wanted hands, it's something that's going to happen, but not in this pilot.
זאת עם הסיגריה זאת עדי.
This is the bitch who makes her do stuff that she doesn't want to.
וכן, אנחנו משחקות חובה או חובה.
It's very okay. This is just a show.
אני אקח חובה.
Let's see if it has a little more. But that's it, basically. That's the movie. If you want to see later, you can. I'll leave it on if you want to
אתם
watch.
רוצים לנחש מי זה?
Okay.
טוב,